Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. How in the heck are you?
Feeling great. It's a very sleepy day.
It is a sleepy day here in Nashville. A little kind of
It's
cloudy
gray.
and gray, a little
Dreary.
rain. Yes.
A perfect day for a nap, someone say.
Perfect day for a nap, yes.
Lee, we were just talking earlier about how you take naps basically every day.
It's true. Yeah, or most days. I try to most days, yes.
My Aura Ring, do you know what this is?
I've heard of them, yes.
It talks about your steps and blah, blah, blah. It also takes stock of your naps.
Oh, really?
It told me that last year, in total, I took 2 naps.
That is just not enough, Savannah.
I feel like I need to be discipled into napping.
Well, I'm a strong advocate of it.
Do you not get at all drowsy afterwards, or do you just wake up feeling ready to go?
You have to know when to get up. Yeah. I mean, my max is 34 minutes.
34.
Oh,
this is a science.
Yeah.
How did you determine that?
I just experimented.
Okay.
But I started paying attention that if I go longer than 34, then I wake up groggy.
And you're setting your alarm?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And typically during the work week, I'm more 18 to 24 minutes. Mm-hmm. Today I did do 30, I think. Nice. But yeah, everybody has different work schedules, rhythms, I guess. But I'm very fresh when I first start at work in the morning. But if I take a nap, then I start out fresh again for the afternoon.
It's like turning over a new page.
Yeah, that's right. So I think I'm more productive, which goes back to the book Rest I mentioned to you, subtitled Why You Get More Done When You Do Less, or something like that. And that's the kind of the
why you get more work done when you work less.
Yeah. And that doesn't work for everybody. It's not going to work for you if you're in retail, or it's not going to work for you if you're doing customer service. But for people who primary work relates to thinking and navigating, knowledge in some way, it works pretty great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, did you finish your perseverance book?
Endurance book?
Dang it. Endurance. I was thinking it's one of those. Did you finish it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard.
So it was rewarding.
Yeah.
Well, obviously someone survived because a book was written about it.
Spoiler here, everyone survives.
You're kidding me.
No, it's amazing.
How encouraging is that?
Yeah, I know.
Did you start anything new?
Did I tell you I read the Wright brothers book?
No.
By David McCullough?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I read the Wright brothers, a book about the Wright brothers. I've read, I'm kind of geeky about, I'm geeky about flying stuff. And so flight and aviation. And so, I read David McCullough's book about the Wright brothers, which is quite good. And I've also just started Edward Abbey's book, The Monkey Wrench Gang, which is one of the big newspapers called it scandalous. Maybe the Smithsonian called it scandalous. It is scandalous from because it's about eco-terrorism. It's about this group of people that go out and they do eco-terrorism. They're all disgusted with the way the southwestern desert in the U.S. is being developed. And so they just decide to go out and be eco-terrorists.
What's an example of eco-terrorism?
In this book, they would go into where they're building a road, and they would just destroy all of the Caterpillar trucks and bulldozers
to stop it from being developed.
Yeah,
okay, that's
so
cool.
forth. Blow up.
I'm not saying I support it or whatever, but
blow up bridges and all this kind of stuff. So it's very wild. And it's it's also quite entertaining, and it's a bit edgy.
Is it a true story?
No.
Oh, so it's all fiction.
All fiction. Yeah.
Oh, because I was like, I want to know about this.
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Yeah, Edward Abbey was a great lover of the U.S. southwestern deserts. This is my third or fourth book of his to read.
Okay, because I recognize that name. Was he the one that did the thing? He was the last one who was able to go to the certain spots in the national park that are now sequestered
yes.
off.
You're thinking about maybe Desert Solitaire.
Yeah, because you talked about that.
Where he himself, that book was nonfiction, and that was when he himself spent a couple of summers being a ranger.
That's it.
And they took a trip down one of the rivers before it was flooded.
Nice.
By, I guess, became Lake Powell. I don't remember the name of the dam. Glen Canyon Dam, maybe.
Do you think we're going to have to bleep that dam out?
You know what the fish said when it ran up against a wall?
What?
Damn.
We need to try to find as many possible ways we can use swear words in a non-swearing
That was not a swear word.
context.
That didn't have an N on the end.
So that Apple Podcast won't mark us as explicit.
What have you been reading or doing?
Lee, so I finished Frozen River, which I talked to you about last time, about that midwife in the 1800s in Maine who helped stop a murder. And I started reading There. Now,
There.
It was like a Pulitzer finalist by a guy named Tommy Orange. And it is a fiction based on urban Native Americans in Oakland, California. And it's a story about 12 different Native Americans all going to a powwow. And it's like you learn all about their stories and why they're going to this event. And it's really, really interesting. Because I'm kind of on this like indigenous kick with learning more about indigenous people in like First Nations in Canada and then Native American in the United States. And so a friend of mine sent it to me as a recommendation. It's been really good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I want to read one review.
Okay.
And then we're going to get started. And you will understand why I'm only reading one because of his review. So this is Brandon Miller. He said, love the show, grateful for pacing today. Then he says, sometimes it drags a bit when there's too many reviews read at the beginning. Wouldn't it be ironic if you read this review at the beginning of the next episode?
I guess it would be ironic.
Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon.
That totally makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, Brandon. Yeah.
I think in my mind,
See, I was going to go, okay, let's start the show.
Oh, I guess we could. We totally
But no,
could.
Go ahead.
Well, in my mind, the reading of the reviews to me is a way of saying, like, we're paying attention, we're listening, we want to hear what you're saying, and we want this to feel like a two-way street.
Yeah.
But I do get how sometimes you just don't care about the reviews and you want to get to the subject.
Yeah.
Do you care?
I don't have strong feelings about it.
Great. So maybe we will just stick with one review at the beginning. Or maybe we won't read any at all.
Sometimes, maybe not.
Brandon, just for you, anytime we skip one, we're just going to say in honor of Brandon, let's start the show.
That's all we're going to do, yeah.
On that note, let's start the show. Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
I'm Lee C. Camp.
Hey, if you like what we're doing and want to help us get the show in front of more people, please do us a favor by following and rating it wherever you listen. If you leave us a review, we might read it on the show, or we might not. Give us 5 stars, hype us up. If you want to watch full video episodes, you can find them on YouTube and Spotify. You can follow the show at The Subtext Show, me at Savannah_Locke, and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, just DM us on Instagram at The Subtext Show. Lee, this week, I want to name our episode, God Had a Big Week in Pop Culture.
Big week for God in pop culture.
It was a real big week for God in pop culture. Things kept on popping up.
Maybe we should say it was a big week for God in scare quotes in pop culture.
I like that.
Yeah.
A big week for God in pop culture.
Yes.
Yeah, because it was just kind of everywhere for some reason. And I kind of collected them all. And now we're going to talk through some of them.
Yes. Good.
And the first one is going to be a huge surprise. There's no way that this would have ever come across your algorithm. And I'm guessing that this is the first intro you've ever had to this artist, correct?
Yes.
Okay, it is a song called Numbers 31, 17 through 18 by Sofia Isella.
The bigger question that's presenting is what kind of God are you defending?
I love this artist. She has a song called Everybody Supports Women. And the lyrics are, everybody supports women until a woman is doing better than you. Everybody tells you to love yourself until you actually do. Like, she has this, like, I don't know, Gen Z rage to her that I love. And she's only like 20 or 21. She could have been a little pop princess, but instead she's just raging. And I'm thrilled for her. So I need you to know that I love this artist.
Got it.
And recently she released this song named after a Bible verse, Numbers 31. And she introduced it at a live show and said that she read Numbers 31, 17 through 18, and two of her Christian friends who were guys responded by brushing it off and saying, well, it's all just a matter of context. And so I'll read the verse out loud so that we know what we're talking about. And what pulled up is the King James Version, so it should feel like home to you, Lee. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him. But all the women, children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. So it's one of these very troublesome passages in the Old Testament that for her did bother her when it comes to Christianity or the Bible, and that her friends just brushed off by saying it all makes sense in context. So do you want to read some of the lyrics maybe to the song, and then we can get started?
Sure.
First of all, how does this hit you in general that a Gen Z grunge pop artist is writing a song about the book of Numbers?
Well, yeah, good.
Are you into it?
Sure.
Does it freak you out at all?
No.
Okay, I love it. Okay, so it starts off with the verse, now kill all the boys, kill every woman who has had sex with a man, but save for yourselves the young girls who have not had sex with a man. Save for yourselves the virgin, right? Take the virgin for yourselves. So then this is what some of the lyrics say. The context is missing, long, long forgotten. Oh, the context. The context is on the milk cartons, but they still fill the bottle for that silhouette of air. The babe will crawl home and suck on excuses and prayers. Context, context. There's context to the slaughter. There's a loving, good reason. God's quotations kill the daughter. Interesting, right?
Yep.
And it just got me thinking about how we read the Bible in different ways.
Yeah.
And how unsatisfied Sophia was with the explanation she had been given.
Reading the Bible, one should always take account of context. But one can say, what I hear her saying is you're saying context in a way that somehow is wanting to take away the horror of this. Mm-hmm. And I would agree that if you're using context to remove the horror of this, then I find that quite lacking in resonance, or let me put it much more strongly. That's very dissatisfying.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate her rage about that.
I do too. Talk to me about your own journey with this, because you grew up very religious. And were there ever times for you growing up that you read parts of the Bible that you were just told, get over it, it's in the Bible, or it's not as bad when you consider the context? Or have you always just been a critical thinker, Lee?
Well, definitely. I remember stories of where the preacher would depict God as arbitrary and capricious, and that might yield itself in terms of violence. And the attitude was, he's God, he can do whatever he wants to do. With my use of he there being intentional for that context. And so, that was not a rare kind of occurrence in my childhood.
And how did you develop a different strategy, or have you? For reading or understanding difficult passages in the Bible?
First of all, I would say that we just have to always be aware of the fact that we're always interpreting the Bible, as I think we've talked about before. And then the question becomes, is one's interpretation a better one or a worse one? And there are a variety of ways. There's no one single way to interpret the Bible or biblical text. For one, it's a lot of different genres included in the Bible. But I think that in my mind, all it takes is a little bit of honesty and a little bit of actually reading the Bible to realize you have to interpret it, and you do have to take into account context, but that doesn't have to be a taking into account of context that somehow is trying to make everything okay. I think maybe one way to summarize what I hear Sophia objecting to is a sort of defensiveness on the behalf of God, put in scare quotes, or on behalf of the Bible, and where a lot of people just can't hear any kind of critique of these texts. And in my mind, what you're doing by being defensive in that way is you're hurting serious engagement, and you're hurting public witness, constructive theological public witness by being defensive. Let people grapple with the text and see what they're saying. Have you ever heard of Phyllis Tribble? She's a feminist scholar who died a number of years ago, and she had this book called Texts of Terror. I've read more about her book than I've read her book. But and this is not one of the 4 texts of terror that she does, but she looks at these horrific episodes of the treatment of women.
Because she did one on Tamar.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so she looks at this, and basically her kind of approach, as I understand it, is she's basically saying, stop trying to clean this stuff up.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
Yeah.
And you need to sit with how horrible this is.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to sit with how horrible it is, then you're doing your own violence to the text, and let the text discomfort you. And otherwise, you're not taking the text seriously. And so I find that kind of approach, assuming that is in fact what she's doing, I find that kind of approach very helpful.
Assuming that's what Phyllis is doing, or Sophia?
Both.
I guess they are kind of doing the same approach, aren't they?
Right. Yeah.
Little does Sophia know.
Yeah.
That she comes from a line of feminist theologians.
Or maybe she does. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe she does. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's really good. I think that we do a lot of harm, or at least I've seen a lot of harm done by people who are wanting to defend the Bible more than human dignity, or sometimes even Jesus, it seems.
Yeah.
It's like I couldn't really even see Jesus saying that about going and taking women for yourselves and killing every man or whatever, to be able to sit in the tension of the Bible rather than try to defend a perfect Bible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things interesting about the context, is the language there, is that you can't understand those. You cannot understand, put that in scare quotes, those 2 verses if you don't pay attention to the context, because there's this ongoing antipathy between Midian, the country of Midian, and the Israelites, and some perceived wrongs that have done against Israel by the people of Midian. And so there's this ongoing struggle, right? And this is part of the horrific end of that war. But even understanding that context doesn't take away, in my mind, again, to repeat myself, the horror of it.
Totally.
It's like, this is horrible.
Yes.
And so I don't know, that kind of approach of where you're trying to take away the horror, also, whether this is quite fair, I don't know, but there's this strong strand in some Christian circles of anti-intellectualism, and it's like if you try to be too smart in the way you read the Bible, then you're somehow untrustworthy. And obviously, as someone who's been in academics all my life, that ticks me off, right? It's like, no, the whole healthy parts of the Christian tradition have always said we should use our whole self to grapple with what it means to follow this faith. You've got in the Middle Ages Anselm, who would speak about faith seeking understanding. You begin with faith, but then what you're trying to do is to say, okay, let's try to make sense of this, and you have to engage your rationality and logic and the hard work of study and serious questions, and let people ask their serious questions and not be so afraid of them and defensive of them, and say, that's a great question, and now let's grapple with it. And sometimes not even to know how you're going to maybe you don't come up with a satisfactory answer for all of the good questions. And so, those are some of the things that bubble up.
But I think there are certainly better answers than maybe others.
For sure.
Yes. And by better, I guess my framework for better there would be more Christ-like answers.
So some answers are worse than others, for sure.
Some answers, thank you for, oh my God. Once again, you are the bumpers and I am the bowling ball. It's like, I'll say something and you just make it better, thank God. I hope that you stay around for a long time. I'm needing this. But it reminds me of a couple of things that have helped me, at least with some of these troubling passages where God seems to ordain legitimate, horrendous genocides and violence and rapes and whatever. First of all, crucifixion of the warrior God. destroys it by Greg Boyd. It's a zillion pages. So the shorter version of the book is called Cross Vision, but I read the full thing in school because he was my professor and he made us. And in that, he goes through every like basically violent passage in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament and offers like different ways of thinking about it. Like, did God actually say that, or was that what they thought God was doing, or blah, blah, blah. So that's one recommendation I would have. And his hermeneutic is called a cruciform hermeneutic, where he's like, anything that doesn't look like Jesus, specifically Jesus on the cross, is not the full image of God. So that would be his idea. And then the second thing I think of a lot is with Pete Enns, who I used to work with. He has this great line that God lets God's children tell the story. And I think about that a lot when I think about not just with the Bible, but also with just people and how we share about what God's doing in our lives. God lets us tell that story. And is it in the perfect way? Who knows? But there's always going to be like human fingerprints on everything that we engage with. And just to be able to name that, I think has been really freeing and helpful in helping me believe in a good God while simultaneously loving and wanting to study the Bible. How does that hit you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, it takes us back to there are a lot of different kind of possible hermeneutical ways to approach some of these texts. And it's worth us getting ourselves schooled in some of these things, you know?
So true.
Right. So like even Greg's approach, which I resonate with a lot of what Greg's done. And at the same time, there are a lot of people that just find his way of reading it completely objectionable.
I know.
Right?
They really can't stand it.
Yeah, that's right. But you know, we haven't even mentioned, you know, if you go back to the so-called, we're getting really geeky now, but you go back to the JEDP source hypothesis for the Pentateuch. And for those who are unaware of this stuff, you know, this is like 101 biblical criticism in seminary years, where there are a lot of the scholarship argues, hypothesizes that there were these 4 different textual strands that then were woven into what we call the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And so, you know, you can go back and there's a lot of scholars who will say that this particular passage in Numbers 31 was a later P source, and it's using it's using this story for an agenda, and its agenda is to say, be holy and don't get mixed up with foreigners and don't get mixed up with pagan worship and syncretism and so forth. And it's telling this horrible story as a way to say, take this very, very seriously. You don't mess with this stuff, without necessarily assuming, you know, these people would say, without necessarily assuming this actually historically happened, right? And so that's another interesting way to read the text, right? And so context does matter, but it all depends upon what you presume the context is, and that's going to change the way you read this stuff. But again, let's don't use context as a way to excuse that this is a hard text. Moral
atrocities.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, we love. Well, Sophia, shout out to you for this song. I don't even know if I should recommend people go listen to it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but just know it's mine. Just know that I listen to it when I'm running, everyone.
If we want to understand you, we should go listen to Sophia.
If you want to understand the dark sides of me, just know Sophia's dropping into it. Oh, Lee, that reminds me, how funny is it that you texted me last week with like a very sincere birthday text, and I was watching T-Pain at Bridgestone Arena, reading your text message while like 20,000 people were singing T-Pain together. And I just thought, Lee is at home in his living room, probably reading a book, being so at peace, and I'm sitting here with like all of these crazy people.
And you were experiencing collective effervescence at Bridgestone.
Genuinely, I texted friends and I said I was levitating during T-Pain.
Yeah.
I was there because the Killers were playing after him. It was for a festival celebrating the First Amendment. But T-Pain, it's the only reason why T-Pain and Killers would ever be on the same lineup. But it was hilarious. And that's what that reminded me of. Okay, Lee, let's move on to another reason God had a big week in pop culture. Paula White-Cain, who is one of Trump's spiritual advisors, compared Trump to Jesus, I think over Easter weekend.
Yes, it was.
And I thought this is a big God moment
Mm-hmm.
in pop culture. So I want to read a quote out. I want to know how this hits you. And I know you have some other things you want to add to this bucket. Paula White looked at Trump and said, Jesus taught so many lessons through his death, burial, and resurrection. He showed us great leadership. Great transformation requires great sacrifice. And Mr. President, no one has paid the price like you have paid the price. It almost cost you your life. You were betrayed and arrested and falsely accused. It's a familiar pattern that our Lord and Savior showed us. And here's where this hits me. First of all, in 1 million directions. But I was just curious, have there ever been any Christ comparisons that have gone well for us? Like, what hit me was like, I disagree with this Christ comparison, but then I thought, am I being biased? And would I agree with another Christ comparison?
Well,
is it ever good to compare someone to Jesus in this way?
I think that it was deeply troubling. Just yesterday, when we were recording this, just yesterday, there was a Mr. Trump himself posted apparently AI generated rendition of himself healing somebody as here he is as the Christ figure. He
was in a white robe with a red sash like Jesus.
Yeah, right. And so I find that kind of stuff blasphemous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that saying, I don't need to say much more than that other than I find it blasphemous and I find it horribly problematic.
So yeah, talk to me about why is it blasphemous? Why is it a big deal?
Blaspheme, to speak irreverently about God or sacred things.
Mm.
And I think that to compare the political shenanigans of someone who clearly is deeply troubled by self-centered pursuits of power and to compare that person to Jesus, that seems to be a textbook definition of blaspheme.
Why do you think that it works?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about apparently, I don't know, I didn't see any outrage about Paula White's comparison,
mm-hmm.
but there was a lot of outrage about the AI image, even from people like the Daily Wire. Writers on the Daily Wire were calling it outrageous blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it didn't work. Maybe it finally got to the point of where it didn't work, where some people were like, okay, oh my,
mm-hmm.
we can't abide this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know in my mind why it took quite so long, because there was all sorts of this kind of stuff happening all along. But I think that one of the, I don't know, there's always been this sort of naivete about if public leaders, in a context in which the perceived secularism squashes any sort of conversation about faith in the public square, some people then go to on the other side, celebrate any use of God talk or quotations of scripture or allusions to the biblical narrative as therefore good.
Mm-hmm.
And that just shows a lack of discernment about saying, well, just because, the old line about, well, the devil quotes scripture, sure he does. But you got to ask the question, towards what end and for what purpose, and what's the bigger story that's being told here? And pulling little snippets out of the Bible doesn't do anybody any good. It's what's the larger story. And that's why a comparison to someone who is being supposedly persecuted, or even someone who had an attempt made on their life, and therefore to make a comparison to Jesus, just doesn't work, because you have to put it in light of the whole narrative of Scripture. And in the whole narrative, there's not a comparison. It's contrast after contrast after contrast after contrast.
Okay, yeah.
And so, but I think when people lose sight of the fact that you have to have the whole story, and maybe they're not equipped to do the whole story, and they just want to pull out cherry pick little ideas and say, well, that looks like so and so. Then they think, well, okay, he's our guy, and so we celebrate this.
It feels better than nothing, maybe.
Yeah.
Like I can kind of see the connection. We're gonna run with it.
Yeah.
Okay, question. This is out of left field, but I want to know. What's the I am not saying this in a defense of blasphemy, okay? But I'm wondering, what's the big deal with blasphemy?
Well, the opposite of blasphemy would be proper reverence.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that a lack of proper reverence for what should be revered, it's kind of like, imagine a child with a loving parent who's been a great parent and has sacrificed, loved, given life to, and loved, and then the kid just kind of spits in their face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's something about that that's morally repugnant, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what blasphemy is. It's a sort of rejection of the gifted nature of our lives. And I don't see how someone can fully embrace the gift that is life if their posture is one of irreverence. And I'm not necessarily even saying, I mean, there are a lot of people who don't hold to any kind of classical theological formulations about God, but would still argue that if you're going to live life well, you need to have a certain posture of reverence and awe about it, right? And that seems true to me. That seems right to me. And it just makes no sense to me that irreverence would ever be any kind of social good.
I agree. The social good piece, particularly, and probably the personal
and
formation.
The personal good, yeah.
Yeah. It brought up for me when we went to the Natural History Museum in New York last year, which was extremely impactful to me. I got on like a very big dinosaur thing after that. But I came back and I was like, where did we come from? I was like, I need to know all this. Anyways, we were at the Natural History Museum and we were looking at this installation of recreated Neanderthals. And there are all of these insane facts near it. And I'm sitting there in awe as an adult, thinking how amazing our own history is, how amazing the earth is. I'm looking around seeing geodes from however many gazillion years ago with these beautiful like diamonds inside. It's just jewels and it's stunning. And a second grade classroom walked by and there were these two boys that looked at the Neanderthal exhibit where the woman was not wearing clothes and just like pointed and laughed and were like, that's so silly. And of course, it's not like irreverence in the same way an adult would be. But I remember thinking, oh, you're totally missing it. Like you're missing like the amazing part of all of this because you don't get that what this is pointing to is like how unbelievably complicated our world is and beautiful and how you shouldn't be here, but you are. And I think for me, when I think about what you're saying, it's like, oh yeah, to be irreverent, once again, a second grader is also just tiny and their brains are so small and they don't know any better yet. But for adults, is that irreverence is really just showing that you're missing the point of all of it. Yeah. But less maybe about God smiting us. Do you know what I mean? I think whenever I hear blaspheme, I hear old school me growing up of being like, if you blaspheme, God is going to shoot lightning down on you. And I wonder if there's a more holistic way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly that's not a very general rule. If so, there would be a lot more dead people being struck down by lightning. So...
Maybe the lightning machine's off or something. I don't know. But yes, that's actually so true. Anyways, any more on this or should we go to the next?
Let's go to the next one.
Great. God, great job having a good week in pop culture. On to the next. Lee, do you know who Perez Hilton is?
I know that Hilton family.
Okay.
And there Paris Hilton. There's Paris Hilton, right?
Oh my God. I wouldn't even have thought that you would have connected those two. Okay, yeah.
Are they supposed to be connected?
They're not. They're not. They're not. But you do know Paris.
Yes. I don't know her, but yes, I know of her.
Okay, so Paris and Perez, not related.
Not
but
related.
great job with your brain making that connection because
Yeah.
they should be.
Yeah.
But no, this guy is called Perez Hilton.
Okay.
And he calls himself, I actually think, the first influencer that ever existed. But he started a gossip column like decades ago.
Okay.
And has kind of been a celebrity gossip columnist for forever. Very well known, very famous. He almost died last month after this crazy sepsis journey, health battle. And when he was on his deathbed, he said that God healed him and saved his life. And then as Perez is now on his recovery journey, because now he's not going to die of sepsis anymore, he has started reading through the Bible. And he created this video and released it last week. And the title is, "This may be controversial, but the Bible and God, : and then it's him talking about it. And I wanted to read a quote. He said, "I don't believe everything the Bible says. The Bible was not written by God. The Bible was written by man. Man is fallible. God is infallible. Men and women make mistakes. God does not make mistakes." And then he said, "The Bible talks a lot about men and women, and if you're a Bible purist, you think women should be subservient to their husbands. I do not believe that. I believe a marriage should be a partnership between two equals." So I thought this was really fascinating for someone who has never read the Bible before, is very new on this journey, for this to be one of his first takeaways.
Yeah.
Talk me through it.
You start.
Lee.
Yeah, you haven't started yet today. Go ahead, start.
But I'm scared that you're going to disagree with me.
Well, that's okay.
Okay, I love his take. I was curious when I was listening to him speak. He doesn't have baggage he's coming into this with. So he's reading this and he's not coming in with, generations before him all saying the same thing about what the Bible ought to be. And instead he's coming at it with this, okay, it seems genuine, like that he genuinely does feel that he has been saved and healed by God. He really wants to know more about God and he's reading the Bible. And it's almost like he's able to name the complexity. I wouldn't use this language necessarily, but he's able to name the complexity of like, oh yeah, this is a messy book, better than someone who had all the religious baggage could.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be refreshing. Would I say that this is my hermeneutic? No, but I found it refreshing that it was his.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that take.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me your real thoughts, Lee.
No, I mean, I think it is interesting, when you talk about the baggage, right? So I start scanning across. Okay, you've got the fundamentalist inerrancy take. You have a slightly just to the left of that, the evangelical infallibility take, and then you move on into Protestant mainstream, which or somebody like Rudolf Bultmann, who's going to say that the Bible is an account of humans talking about their encounter with God. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like we do have all these kind of preset categories, and it is kind of refreshing to whether you like where he comes out with some stuff or not, somebody to be very non-laden with all of that stuff and just to say, yeah, this is kind of the way I see it. So,
this is how he's seeing it in the beginning of his journey. Yeah. And I loved too that he's unburdened when he's reading the Bible. Yeah. Like he's just curious.
Yeah.
And there's something refreshing about that too.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Someone underneath the video, so he had a lot of comments that were supportive. Someone underneath the video said, "Perez, you can't cherry pick the Bible. You can either take it as it is or don't." And even that with like cherry pick, I'm like, Perez has probably not heard that as it relates to the Bible.
Yeah.
But we do because that's how we speak and that's our language. But for him, he's coming in as an alien to this.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of response to him strikes me as maybe cherry picking in the sense that it wants to act as if we don't have to read the Bible. We don't have to interpret the Bible. We just take it as it is or not, right? And as we were saying earlier in this very episode, right, it simply does not work, right? I doubt that person who wrote that really wants us practicing stoning for adultery
Right.
or stoning the rebellious kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really doubt they want that, which immediately means they have, you know, if they're going to use their language, cherry picked.
Yes.
But a better language is that we all do have to interpret. And then the question is that a better interpretation or less interpretation? And, you know, I would want to make the case that Perez language about the relationship between men and women actually is consistent with the whole story of the Bible, not opposed to it, right? And so there are ways that you, and lots of people have done this, you know, who read what's happening by the time you get to the New Testament, of saying that even things that appear to be patriarchal in the Apostle Paul are actually subverting first century household codes that were highly hierarchical, and he's giving an approach that's going to eat away at that from the inside, and it's finally going to fall in on itself, which is precisely what happened in the Christian tradition. And so maybe Perez is actually being more of Bible purist than the people who would read it some other way.
Interesting.
Right?
Yes.
Well, a lot of people forget. A lot of people think that the so-called conservatives means this is the way they read it in the first century, which is simply not true in many, 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 many cases, right? They're doing a reading that's more like concerned with the debates of 100 years ago or 500 or 600 years ago, but not what they were really necessarily debating in the 3rd century or the 2nd century. And so maybe Perez is a little more Bible purist than Perez thinks Perez is.
I know, and he hasn't even gotten through the whole thing yet.
And he hasn't even gotten through the whole thing yet.
Literally, he's
maybe
still in
by
OT.
the time he gets to the end, he will say, I am a Bible purist and I stand by what I said in that
Imagine.
Yeah.
Well, if he was a Bible purist, he'd probably stop running a gossip column. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like a lot to be done there.
Maybe
too.
he will.
Maybe he will. Perez, you've got it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a book called Jesus Was a Feminist by Leonard Swidler, where he basically goes through every interaction that Jesus has with a woman in the Bible. And to your point, shows how some of the context clues that if we miss them, we don't realize how revolutionary some of those encounters really were.
See how important context is.
Literally, can we talk about how it's a full circle moment?
Yes.
Between Sofia and Perez.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything more on Perez, or do you want to move on to the last one?
Let's move on to the last one.
Okay, this is such a pure ending for God this week in pop culture. Did you watch the Artemis II mission?
I did watch segments of it, yes, and I kind of kept going back to it and watching, checking in on them and so forth.
I did too.
Yeah.
How did you feel watching it?
Oh, it's great. I'm a aviation and space geek, and so yeah, I love that stuff.
Wait, for real, right now, if it was offered to you that you could go up to space, would you do it?
Absolutely.
Even with the risks?
Sure.
Even if it was for 14 days?
For sure.
So you would go no matter what?
Yeah.
Lee, that is so brave.
I don't know if it's brave.
It is. I would just watch it from TV. I would wager that a lot of people would. I was just thinking the whole time, they are so brave for being out there because you're
brave.
just in this tiny little capsule floating around space.
They're very brave, yeah.
And how there aren't rockets really propelling them anywhere at some points. Like they're just being floated around by gravity and by like the pull of things.
Pulled around by gravity, yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah, inertia and gravity, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, whatever. Okay, layperson's turns. Here we are. But I was curious if you watched Victor Glover's response when they asked if he had any Easter message.
I did not.
He didn't have anything prepared, but then he gave this beautiful message that I wanted to talk about. I'm just going to pick some random quotes, and if you want to read the whole thing, you guys can. I think for me, one of the really important personal perspectives that I have up here is I can really see Earth as one thing. And when I read the Bible and I look at all the amazing things that were done for us and who created it, it's you have this amazing place. You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth that was created to give us a place to live in the universe and the cosmos. And then he said this. Maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you. And I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special. In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. And then he said, as we go into Easter Sunday thinking about this, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this thing together. Isn't that a stunning message?
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly beautifully consistent with the whole notion of a resurrected, crucified and resurrected Christ breaking down bounds of hostility between us all.
Yeah.
And it's very, very lovely.
That is a good take about the hostility piece.
Yeah.
That we have to get through this together.
Yeah.
And the resurrection piece of that too is really stunning, that God is working to redeem the whole entire universe, not just like our personal sin or something. I also thought theologically it was interesting that I think that a common cultural message is that for me to be important, I have to make myself bigger. My influence has to grow. I have to get more followers. I have to sell more books. The podcast has to do better, blah, blah, blah. And that's when we become important. And I thought it was a really great theological statement that he was like, you're on this tiny dot and you are a tiny dot on the tiny dot and you are so special.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the inverse of what we would think would make us special is what makes us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very nice interpretation. Did you remember that there was a very similar occasion in 1968?
Oh my gosh, you sent me this video.
So the first time, I think it was the first time, Apollo 8, the first time humankind had gone around the moon. So the same kind of route that the Artemis mission took, though the Artemis mission went out further. But as they were, I think if I remember the story correctly, as they were coming back around into lunar sunrise on Christmas Eve of 1968, the three astronauts in the capsule read Genesis 1.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
But it was with a similar sort of interpretation, if I remember correctly, of saying, that was a horribly distressing year, assassinations, and all sorts of uproar and turmoil in the United States. And they were saying, look, we're all in this together, and all these divisions that we have, and let's remember where we come from. And so it was a beautiful moment as well.
I didn't think about how timely this mission has felt.
Yeah.
And all of these chaotic times and all of the stuff that's happening, to have someone be able to get perspective on us is really healing and important.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's happened again.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will happen more.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yes.
Well, God, great job having such a great week in pop culture. And Lee, great job assessing it.
Yeah, thank you, Savannah. Good to be with you.